Okay, I'm going to hit the gavel then. Good evening, and board members, welcome back home to the middle school. This July 6, 2021 regular meeting of the Mount Horeb Area School District's Board of Education shall come to order. Roll call: Jessica.
Here.
Rod.
Here.
Leah.
Here.
Jim.
Here.
Diana.
Here.
And Jeff.
Here.
Shelby, has this meeting been properly noticed and certified?
Yes, it has.
Thank you. If you're able, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Item 1B. Mr. Hanna, would you please read our mission statement this evening?
Okay. The Mount Horeb Area School District, in partnership with the community, is dedicated to nurturing, educating, and challenging all students, preparing and empowering them to be productive, responsible, and self-fulfilled members of society.
Thank you. Item 2A, approval of the presented revised agenda. Are there any revision requests from the board?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion made by Diana, seconded by Rod to approve the agenda as presented. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. Motion passes. Item 2B, approval of the June 21st, 2021 board meeting minutes.
There's an error in there.
Thank you. Please proceed.
The adjournment of the meeting was not made by me. I wasn't there.
Okay, thank you. We'll have an edit in for that. I'll entertain a motion to edit with an adjournment name switch.
So moved. Second.
Motion made by Leah, seconded by Diana to edit a revised copy of the June 21st, 2021 board meeting minutes. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. Motion passes. Item 3A, school news. Dr. Salerno.
Well, good evening, everyone. It is a delight to have people back here in the middle school step room for our Board of Education meeting. I think the first time really since March of 2020. So quite a long ride since then. A lot has been accomplished. One of those pieces that's important to us in the upcoming next several days happens to be summer school, part 2 of our summer program, which will begin next Monday, the 12th of July. We've already finished one session of summer school, and at the conclusion of this session, we will be sure to have a report to the board as to how things have gone. I'm also very sensitive to wanting to identify how things have gone during the second semester of the school year, and we're in the process right now of pulling together some data that helps us discern to what extent our students experienced growth, not only academically, socially, and emotionally, in light of the pandemic. And then lastly, if you happen to be downtown, you can catch a really great art show that's just been put up since June 30th. Adelaide Aragoni has put together an art show that is just absolutely fantastic. If you can't get out there, you can see the art show on the internet off the history of her and her accomplishments, and are grateful to her giving her time and talent, as well as her high school art teachers for helping to sponsor her efforts. So that's my story. That's what I've got.
Thank you, Dr. Salerno. Do any board members have any school news to share?
I do. Last week I met with Mr. Christensen as the middle school liaison, and we had a nice talk just about how the end of the school year wrapped up. The day after the students left, they had a bit of a retreat to talk about what had worked well, what things they wanted to keep in place, what things they had kind of thought that in the past they maybe wouldn't bring back, things like and he also shared with me about even though they didn't work on their PLCs last year just because of the hybrid nature and the virtual, there were still so many things that they learned about common assessments and essential learning outcomes that just fed right into their PLC work, and he felt that they would really be able to just keep moving right along. Come fall, he talked about really making sure students were how to do middle school was what he talked about. For so many of our middle school students, they were either in school for only half a semester, and then COVID happened, or they were only in school for the second semester. So they really just still need to learn some of those skills about how to be a middle school student. So even though they might be 7th graders or 8th graders. So he said that was something that they would plan for. And then in terms of next steps, that come July and then in August, they'll start planning their goals for this coming year and do their data retreat. And he said that one of his biggest concerns was similar to all of ours, the state budget. So, but we had a nice chat, and I'm sure that I'll meet with him in the fall.
Thank you, Jessica. Any other board members have school news to share? All right, moving on to 3B, citizens' comments. Shelby, do we have anyone signed up to speak this evening?
Not yet.
Okay, would anyone present like to make a citizen's comment? Hearing none, moving on to item 4A, personnel transactions. Dr. Solander, any remarks for this?
None at this time.
Board members, questions or clarifications?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion made by Jeff and seconded by Diana to approve the personnel transactions. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Motion passes. Item 5, our consent agenda. Would any board members like to pull out letters A through B to remark individually?
Motion to approve consent agenda.
Second.
Motion made by Diana, seconded by Leah, to approve our consent agenda. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Motion passes. Moving on to our discussion items. Item 6A, our annual Friend of Education Award, given this evening to our 4 key partners. Board members, I think we are very fortunate that we have these early education professionals here because they are the very first ones to guide families into our entire school system. They not only hold the welcome sign, they really show our students how much there is to love about going to school. Isn't that right, Dr. Solano?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And when you think about annual Friends of Education, you truly embody a friend to our school district in all that you've done this past year and have done in prior years as well. And as a small token of appreciation, the board would like to bestow a wonderful certificate that's been made and would love to get a picture with you so that we can celebrate your success for the year. We're all about pictures here, but I'm hearing some rain that we don't go outside tonight. So maybe what we do is, would it be okay if we took a picture just over in the step area here? Okay, and let's get you those certificates too. Would it be okay?
Yes, please.
Let's do that, everyone. Board members, join us, please.
Shelby, help the shift around. Yeah.
Do you need us to?
Can Jeff take it one step to the left? And then Leah also.
Okay.
That's perfect.
We're missing someone. Sarastraca. I just realized that. Awesome. Let's give everyone a
I'd be remiss if I didn't mention our 4K coordinator, who is, just many of you know, to be just an absolute gem. I'm referring to Nicole Teep. Nicole had a picture taken with Sarah a couple of weeks ago in anticipation as she's enjoying some time with her family and friends who are in town tonight. But her presence is definitely not lost on us tonight. So, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to item 6B, board meeting procedures. So now that we've returned to home base after a long journey away in various formats, it seems like now is the right time to re-educate ourselves on parliamentary procedures. And though I have tried to really study this 12th edition robust manual, I really have. There's post-its. We are very lucky to have a skilled clerk amongst us. So, Mrs. Lipska, please help us.
Yes, so you should have gotten the cheat sheet that I sent. I have used this many times in my career. That kind of helps tell when what you can say, when you should say it. Kind of the beginning cheat sheet. I mean, we did really fine with adjournments and that. One of the things we are not so good at, and part of it is, I think, from being online for so long, is that, Kimberly is the one running the meeting as the president, so before we can speak, we technically need to be recognized. I don't know if we necessarily need to raise our hands, but, we've done that in the past. One of the other things we've done in the past at board workshops is come up with the norms, like, do we want to raise our hands, or do we just say, oh, excuse me? Either one kind of works. Technically, we shouldn't debate on action items without there being a motion on the floor. We do it, but technically we should have a motion and then debate before we get there. And the maker of that motion does have the first right to speak, and then Kimberly would call on whomever after that. We don't use it very often, but we can call the question. Once we've heard pros and cons, if the debate goes on for a while, someone can call the question. I think they worded it a little differently in here, like pose the question or something like that. But if you're done with debate and you want us to vote, that's something that can be done. On the cheat sheet on the very far column, it will tell you who gets to, if the vote needs to be by majority or if the chair can just make the decision. For example, if you wanted to do a point of privilege, point of privilege, it's freezing in here, Kimberly could decide to hear that or not. If we move to pose the question, you do need 2/3 of a vote. So if I was like, I'm holding this debate, let's call the question, and I'm the only one who thinks that, then we don't call the question. There's a lot of examples in here. One of the other things, which I think we do pretty well most of the time, but not always, is stating what our emotions are exactly. Because I know there's been times where we voted, and then I see what's in the minutes, and I'm like, I didn't think that was the motion. So being very specific on what our emotions are, so we all know what we're voting on. That's really kind of about it, is we really just need to get a little better at defining what our emotions are and being called on, so that Kimberly can see the floor. Questions about my fancy cheat sheet? And I do have a, Robert's Rules abbreviated skinny document, I believe somewhere that I can dig out, but I don't know if it's the latest version. Because I think we're on 12 and it might be 10. But yeah, that's kind of what I've got.
Thank you, Leah. Very helpful. I will be referring to my cheat sheet. Appreciate it. That is rain. Mm-hmm.
I remember one time we were in here when it rained like that.
We were mopping afterwards, yes.
So I don't know if this is the appropriate time or not, but I guess one of the things that Leah said sort of struck me, and that is that, I think as a body, we do a pretty good job of having discussions. And I can't remember a time when things have gotten out of control, or so the body sets the rules for the body, and I think at the appropriate time maybe we have a discussion about this. But I really think that we have a very nice way of having a discussion with each other, and this idea it's clearly something in Robert's rules, but being called on. I mean, I can't imagine what that would do to the kind of discussions that I think we've had in this group.
I mean, that's not really something we've ever done for board members to have to raise their hand. But
We did when Mary was president. She would call on somebody you
Wasn't
had
Mary.
to.
And it was Dan.
It was
For me.
a single person.
Well, I mean, I'm just telling you what technically you should do. Now, we have had, like I said, we've had workshops where we've just determined what the norms are, and maybe that's something we do, but ultimately Kimberly owns the floor, and she needs to recognize someone before they speak if we're following Robert's rules. But I agree, it's weird to raise your hand.
Yeah, unless we decide as a body that that's not what we want to do,
I think it's
which we can do.
I think it's a great idea to have a discussion at a workshop about our group norms and how we want to respect each other by the way we conduct business here.
I mean, technically, we have made the decision because we said we have adopted Robert's rules at our May meeting that we do that we say we're going to follow Robert's rules. So, but I agree, we've always been a little flexible with Robert's rules.
Further comments, questions for Leah?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Leah. Diane, I like your idea a lot as well. Okay, moving on then to item 6C, a recap of the CESA 2 convention that occurred on June 15th. Thank you for sending me to the annual CESA 2 convention. CESA being an acronym for the Cooperative Educational Service Agencies. A little trivia that they always start us off with. There are 12 CESAs in Wisconsin, organized by region. Mount Horeb falling into Region 2, which is the largest CESA. This kind of blows my mind. 74 districts in our region. It's a big one. So, a wide variety of a la carte services to districts for both students and staff, filling in gaps in instructional, certification, and training needs, and they also mentor new teachers. You may recall at our last board meeting we did approve a contract for a deaf and hard of hearing teacher, so that's through CESA. Many parents have their first encounter through CESA through driver's education. So it comes into different points. So these annual summer meetings that we go to, they're attended by school board members. They're sort of a trifecta purpose. So the first is to go over the catalog and again highlight all the common services, highlight any new services that they could offer districts. The second is they do a nice review of sort of the educational climate in the state of Wisconsin right now through a presentation guest speaker. So that was Dr. Jill Underley this time, who did field questions on Zoom calls, primarily about teacher licensing and lifetime licensing, as well as some of those burning state funding questions. And then the last part of this annual meeting is the reorganization meeting. So school board members actually make up the Board of Control for CESA, and they're doing a lot of what we do right here at this table. They're writing policies, they're making staffing decisions. So that is handled by school board members with a vote that evening to see who should be on the Board of Control. So that is a recap of what happens at the CESA convention. Can I answer any questions?
Just curious who was on the Board of Control.
So it is one from each school district area. They sort of subdivide it. So our closest one is Cross Plains for the next 3-year term on a Board of Control.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for going and bringing back information.
You bet. Anything else? Wonderful. Well, then let's move on to 60 committee member reports. Mrs. Aragoni, you're listed first for finance.
I have a short update because many of these things have already been brought to the full board. We met on Monday, June 14th. We discussed that there were no donations to consider to start off with. Mr. DeYoung shared with us the budget revisions for the 2021 general funds and special education education funds that we then moved to bring to the full board, which were brought up at our last meeting. We also considered a quote for the purchase of new Chromebooks, which we also made a motion for that to come to the full board, which that also came to the full board at our last meeting. We reviewed the budget calendar and some important dates to remember. We also had a discussion on some of the grant funding that the district receives, that most are funded by the federal and state governments, and they're typically not competitive. We didn't apply for them, and almost always get them. And our next meeting is July 19th at 5:30. That's all I have, please.
Thank you. Questions for Jessica? All right, Mrs. Lipska, you're next for safety and wellness.
All right, so we met on June 20th. After some technical difficulties, we got our meeting started. We started with mental health. Students who need it can still get mental health support over the summer. People should contact the building principal or Brian Johnson if students do need support. Some of those supports do include like work on mental health is working through the summer. We're still waiting to hear back to see if we've gotten some of our grants. I think we got one and are waiting on the other. Brian mentioned earlier in our education SAW meeting, we did hire Emily McGonigal, who works for Building Bridges. She will now be a social worker for us, which is a loss for them and a gain for us. So that's fantastic. They are interviewing her replacements tomorrow.
That's right.
We also discussed the Dane County Youth Risk Assessment, which then was brought to the board, so you guys have heard all about that. We tabled our equity discussion because of the technical difficulties. We ran out of time. But we did meet tonight with the Education Committee where we discussed some curriculum updates, some technology updates, some of the equity work. We talked about that, and we'll talk about all that again next time. And we discussed our district's at-risk plan, and we meet again on August 16th.
Thank you, Leah. Questions for Leah? Okay, we'll move on to 6E, our latest information advocacy report. Mrs. Straka.
Okay, thank you. So, as I mentioned in the Education Committee meeting, I will be sharing some of our technology updates in this most recent information advocacy report. And it's a different approach than I had in previous years, just because we had a unique year. In the past, I recorded all of our two indicators separately. The technology integration, and then the second indicator is the research-based innovative practices and curriculum. Well, this year, these two definitely merged. Sorry about that. And I decided this year to combine these two reports into these two indicators into one summary. So the structure of this report, as you can see, it looks at technology from the hardware point of view, from the digital tools and instructional practices point of view, and the professional learning. So those are the three areas I'll talk briefly on today. So the focus on the hardware piece. We've been working towards a 5-year plan where we are moving towards a one-to-one atmosphere for our students. This year, that picked up a little sooner than we had planned. And more students had school district-owned devices than ever. And we purchased more Chromebooks because of that. And we're in a really good spot next year to have the plan laid out before you, where we can see the grade level band between having more Chromebooks in the hands of some of our younger students, but then in grades 3 through 12, where every student should have access to a Chromebook that they can use either within the classroom, and that would be grades 3 through 5, where you have 24 kids in the classroom, there's 24 Chromebooks, each student is assigned a Chromebook that stays in the classroom with them. However, 6 through 12, students would have access to a Chromebook that they would take home with them, that learning beyond the school building walls. So we were moving towards one-to-one, and the silver lining of COVID, right, we've heard that a couple times, is that we can move a little bit quicker getting to that one-to-one atmosphere for our students. But we also know, some of our older students have preferred to bring their own Chromebooks to school. So making sure we have that BYOD policy and device option is there as well. Since we are sending more Chromebooks out and we aren't being reactive to COVID, we're sticking with our plan and being proactive. We will be offering an insurance option to families this coming summer for the next school year. So with the online registration system, there will be an option and information for families to learn about this new insurance policy and this new insurance program through a company called Security. And Josh Cataldo, our district technology coordinator, has been looking at and vetting this company since even late last fall, early winter, to learn more about it, to make sure that we are confident with Security and offering this option for families to choose to purchase. And then families would then work with this third-party vendor on any needs. We can definitely help in the process and make sure Chromebooks are available to students. But again, families would be opting into that insurance piece. So that's a new piece as we're working on our hardware and making sure we have what we can get to students. The second piece then is the digital tools and instructional practices. And what I would like to focus on here more so is teachers, and as a school district, we've really honed in on specific digital tools and services. And I sent out a survey to staff back in March, and then I reported on that survey to the Education Committee in April or May about the results of that. And it's also embedded within this presentation as well, about specific products that our teachers had used or students have used. And it's great to have the products, but we want to get our biggest bang for our buck. So having a good understanding of what products we should continue to use into the school year. So that was helpful information that we've already created purchase orders for and are planning to use in many of the products this coming school year as well. And then the last piece is that professional learning piece. We also, just like we had a hardware buying timeline that got moved up a little bit, the professional learning timeline got moved up a little bit as to which grade level cohorts would receive which type of instruction or professional development support. And the majority of Mount Horeb staff had to learn some products rather quickly, just like many educators across the state, learn new platforms quickly. So we really worked hard last summer, last July, August, and a little bit into the school year, but we knew teachers only had so much bandwidth to provide some trainings. We also knew that people were in different spots. We had some teams, like our 5th grade team or 6th grade team, who had professional development with instructional technology and practices a couple years ahead of some of their peers. So that was a learning piece too, to make sure that we could get everyone with that baseline knowledge, but then push some groups forward as well. And we'll still continue to work with grade level teams and content area teams to provide them that professional development. They'll just be further along than what their peers were a couple years ago in that sequence of professional development. As you guys know, technology is always changing. There's always the next best app, the next best phone, right? So we've been able to find ways to get to a yes on continuing products like Nearpod or Clever or Seesaw. And we'll be creative with our solutions. And that's just an area that I like to continue to balance the fiscal dollar piece of it, again, for that biggest bang for our buck. So that's where I am in moving forward. How long can we use free versions of things until we have to pay for them? And just balancing that piece. But we're in a good spot. I remember, Diana, I think like 6 years ago, like technology was a concern, and we're getting closer to where we want it to be, I think, at that point. So we're getting there systematically. That's our goal. That's all I have.
Questions for Sarah? Leah?
So you mentioned the insurance that parents could opt into. I'm assuming there's a cost associated with it.
Yep, it is $29.95 for any model of Chromebooks
So
for the
is
year.
that something we need to put on the fee schedule?
It's not a fee we collect. So it would be part of the online registration system. Like when you go in as a parent mid-July and go through all the questions, we're going to have a section, your devoted to, first of all, do you want a Chromebook, right? Some families may choose, or if they have a Chromebook for the kiddos or a laptop, to bring that. If you do want a district-owned Chromebook, these are the expectations. You're signing off, right? You know what's happening. Your student's signing off. And then there is this insurance option families can choose to purchase through the third-party system. We're not collecting fees for it.
I get that, but at the same time, I don't know, and maybe it's just me, but like I sit down at the beginning with that fee schedule and go, okay, how much money do I need to come up with for school? And I write it all down, and it's not something, I don't think there's anything else that we're like, hey, there's this extra fee, and maybe lunch, you know what the fees are for that, so maybe it's just an educational piece, I guess, for parents. And
Are you thinking like the one-page snapshot fee schedule that we
yeah,
have?
yep. And even if it just said like option, like an optional thing, just so parents know it's something that they need to consider. And is it something that you pay for each student?
Each device.
Each device. And is the expectation that all kids will have like a device? Like I read through this, but so please don't think that I didn't. But is the expectation that all students K-12 will have a device next year, or are expected, I guess, to have a device?
3 through 12, 3 through 5 will have a device in district in their classroom. If it's going home 6 through 12,
6 through 12.
Then if the family would elect to have the insurance, because we're going to do a good job monitoring next year. If it's broken, the screen's broken, and that fee would be placed. The fee to fix it without having insurance would be placed on an infant campus account.
And I know we haven't spelled out this year. Is it going to be spelled out in the registration? Like if you don't opt, like what is, because I know I have insurance on my phone, but 90% of the time when I call, if whatever is wrong with it isn't covered by insurance.
Yeah, this will cover many things. Well, you can go to the website. Or
Crack screens,
Yep.
lost power cords, those kinds of things. And yes, I wrote my back-to-school letter to families last week, and so I do have a section on secure intent. And rest assured, we also want to be recognizing of the fact that not every family has unlimited dollars, and we want to do whatever we can to help families as well who might qualify for free or reduced lunch services to make certain that they can get access to something like this if they so choose. There's obviously other extenuating circumstances that we want to be mindful of, and we'll continue to do that. But yeah, we just want to give everyone an opportunity to make certain that what we give out, we get back.
No, I completely agree. Will they only have during registration to opt in to the insurance? Because what I hate for is, my kid drops and I'm like, I'd really like to get that insurance that you guys offer.
I think the deadline would likely be around the time the student receives the device. It would be covered, yeah.
Yes, there's early September. I think there's a slight grace period, right? You get the Chromebook at home, those types of things. On page 2, Dr. Schleino, in the middle, right there, thank you. The digital learning website has the information that would be in the online registration system. It would kick families to here to learn more. So we just have an overview piece, but if you scroll down a little bit, either way, we go to security. Otherwise, we have insurance information. If families do not elect the insurance information, how much it costs to fix it or repair it. So we have a spreadsheet there.
Okay.
And then a frequently asked questions. So that information is accessible and linked to the OLR system when families register. Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay.
We appreciate you asking about that, how we can give access to as many families as possible who want it. So thank you for being so thoughtful.
Other questions for Sarah? Thank you, Sarah. See you soon. Item 6F, our annual meeting agenda. Dr. Salerno.
Yes, this will look very familiar to board members as it's one that we use for the community's annual meeting. That meeting is slated to take place on August the 9th at the Intermediate Center at 6 p.m. We encourage everyone and anyone who has an interest in public school funding and how we allocate our resources in alignment with our strategic plan to join us that night. Lots of opportunities for our community to share their input with two such situations as you'll see noted on the agenda. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Looks familiar.
Yeah.
One thing I think last year, Steve, we had citizen comments after the, and I don't see that.
Number 13.
It's
Any
labeled
other-
a little bit.
And this is labeled because technically under the powers of the annual meeting, it's not subject to just any and all comments. It's subject to
Right,
questions
right.
and comments relative to the annual meeting.
I assume the script will reflect the fact that 13 includes citizen comment.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And then you'll also note we have citizen comments. Too. Mhm.
Thank you.
Other questions about our annual meeting? Thank you, Steve. We'll see you there. Now on to our 3-pack of action items, back with the magnificent Sarastraca. 7A, consideration of 4K contracts. Board members, this is for the 2022-2023 school year. Sarah.
Correct, yes it is. Okay, take us on a journey. So, back in the winter, like a January meeting, we had a brief discussion about looking at the Mount Horeb 4K contracts and looking at any language or structuring changes that may be needed. And that then led to a series of about 4 meetings that we had with myself, Kimberly, Diana, Nicole Teep, and
Julie.
Julie Ham, who is the director at Hearts and Hands, where my children went. So, just that kind of day. And Julie served as the 4K director representative. And then I served, and Nicole served as the district representative. And then we had our board members there as well. And then Steve, you attended here and there as well as needed for some internal meetings. And those meetings began on April 6th. And like I said, we had a series of about 4 meetings with that core team. And we approached the review of the contract from mainly 2 different angles. First, we did a crosswalk where we looked at the Department of Children and Family Interagency Agreement sort of components. And we crosswalked each of those 15-ish components with the school district's contract that we had with the sites, making sure that those components were there. And largely they were. You can always fine-tune everything, so we kept notes on what we could fine-tune. And then the second lens came from our lawyer at Boardman and Clark, who specializes in 4K contracts, Mr. Fahey. And he went through then from his perspective, looking at through law and the district lens, to also see what kind of changes and updates we needed. So we had those 2 lenses going into the contract that you have before you. We made some structuring and restructuring changes. So for example, we added a student records section we just took from other areas and made that by itself. We just thought that would be a better spot. 2 other structuring changes, for example, on page 6, on page 5 to 6, with our support services, sort of bulleting A, B, C, D, those out to make those support services that the school district offers to the 4K sites very explicit. So we had those restructuring changes, but we also had some terminology changes as well and some cleanup. Some pieces that Diana pulled out and also some pieces that Mr. Fahey offered as well from his perspective with the law. We also had a couple more substantive changes as well in some of our termination and dispute language. So I'm just going to go to that in mine. So the dispute language has been altered and updated, And the termination language has been altered, or added. Diana, you added an update our dispute language. And then Mr. Fahey, we had breach language, but we never had termination language, so he helped us with that as well. So those are more, like I said, substantive changes. Other than that, the core parts of the contract remain relatively the same. We did have, like I said, some smaller changes, clarifications, more legal terminology pieces. The one piece that I think shows how strong a partnership we have with our team was actually on page 9. Mr. Fahey wanted to really clarify the term partnership from a legal sense, where it says no partnership, bottom of page 9J. And we really talked with the sites about what that means, because we think we have a partnership. We know we have a partnership with our sites. We have a very, very strong partnership with our community sites. And that was an area that had them scratching their heads a little bit, because like, wait, we are partners. So we had to clarify that, and we had a great meeting with Steve and Nicole Teep and Julie Ham and I. That was one of our talking points, because we want to make sure our partners know, like, this is a partnership contract, right? Just because we had our district lawyer look at it and give the district protection, we also want to make sure that our sites also feel protected, and it is an agreement. So we worked really hard on that. I believe we got to that. I don't know if Kimberly or Diana, if you want to add anything. And Jim was at our last meeting as well. 2 meetings, I think. I left you up, buddy. Sorry.
Okay.
Jim also participated in the meeting with the directors we had and answered some of their questions. You were there for about half of it. And then you attended our final agreement meeting as well. So sorry about that, Jim. I don't know if anyone has anything else they want to add. Because this is a team. This was a team, definitely, revision process.
It was, and it was really, really good to work with with Julie, as a representative of the 4K directors, to be, like you said, in partnership. And that's kind of the no partnership. That's legal stuff.
Yeah,
that's not the same thing.
Correct. Yeah.
Question.
Please.
Leah.
Seems to be the night for it. Section 2, Part B says providers will maintain an appropriate environment for 4-year-olds. My kid was 5 by the end of 4K. Like, is there a reason we specifically call out 4-year-olds instead of students, or like, is there like?
Because
We never picked up on that.
our relationship
It's
is just relative to 4K students, not the entire site. And I wonder if maybe that's the scope of what the attorney was kind of thinking about, was just working with our 4-year-olds. But maybe I'll leave it to others who.
As opposed to babies, or some of this.
We think 4 to 5, right? You guys turn 5
Yeah.
typically. But the environment, you still have 4-year-olds there, right? So we want to make sure we have an environment that's appropriate for the youngest student within that environment. And it's a 4K program, 4-year-old kindergarten program versus a 5-year-old, which is in our building. So that's probably part of it too. But it's
That's
a
a
good
really
question.
good explanation, actually. Make sure that the site is appropriate for the youngest of
Yep.
the.
Yeah, it made perfect sense, but I was just like, no, by the time he was done, he was 5.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, many are.
Other questions for Sarah?
Board members, if you don't mind me adding, one of the other pieces when we look at language in a contract, often that's in tandem with the financial side of the house and the per pupil allocation. We have been asked to look at that as part of our upcoming budget. And at this time, I've asked Sarah's administrative assistant to begin to take a pulse as to what our regional school districts are doing in terms of per pupil allocation. To the best of my knowledge, I don't think we've increased since ever. Okay.
But when we initiated this program,
We're quite favorable.
10 years, 8 years ago, a while ago, about 8 years ago.
I'm testing my memory.
Yeah, 6 or 7 years in my role. We were the highest, so not one of the highest in the area, and our directors were very happy with that. But we do have the information right now that we can start to look at.
One of the pieces I'd like that decision to be made is in totality of the entire budget outlook, which we know is just starting to come to fruition as the current state budget sits on the governor's desk. So we wanted you to know we didn't miss that beat, thanks to Sarah and Megan's good work.
So then, did you want us to approve the contract tonight and we'll reopen it to talk about the dollars?
Thank you. It's our intent tonight to have the bones of the contract prepared such that when December rolls around, November rolls around, which is typically when the board does approve these site partner contracts, it would be inclusive of whatever dollar amount is applicable. Thanks for asking.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion made by Diana and seconded by Jeff to approve the 2022-2023 4K contracts. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. Our contracts are renewed. Item 7B, consideration of our annual academic standards. Sarah.
Thank you again. Every year in July, typically at the first meeting in July, school districts across the state approve the academic standards for the upcoming school year. So we're hitting that time now, and I'm offering to you our most updated version of our district standards. We talked about these at the Education Committee meeting. I pointed out a couple of changes. So, for example, I added computer science because we do have a computer science coursework at the high school. So I wanted to make sure those were included as well. Human growth and development was not in there. With our very thorough work with our Human Growth and Development Committee, realizing that we didn't have the new sex education standards that just came out about a year ago there, we wanted to make sure those were included as well to be as transparent as possible. And then, so those were the two big changes, or two big additions, I should say. And then updating some of the links because we had math standards that came out actually this past May. Wanting to make sure that those were there, and we're doing lots of work with those actually math standards at the majority of our grade levels this school year and following school years. And then May of 2020, the new PE standards had come out, but we didn't have an opportunity last summer to really work on them. And this summer, I'm meeting with the PE departments for 2 days to start digging into those standards and realigning some work there and creating some performance-based assessments based on the standards. So those are some updates on some of the standards and the work that we'll be doing. So looking forward to any questions or your motion to approve the standards. And then we publish these. This will be published on our website for families to have access to.
Motion to approve. Second.
Motion made by Lee and seconded by Jessica to approve our annual academic standards. Further discussion? Just to compliment Sarah, thank you for pulling out what was new this year. Appreciated hearing that. Any other further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion passes. Our academic standards are approved. And 7C, our consideration of education for employment plan. Sarah.
Thank you. Also, every year annually, we look at the district education for employment plan. Also a part of academic and career planning, or ACP. You may have heard that acronym before in the past couple of years. Pulled our district team together. Mr. Lightfried was part of our work this past spring as well. And going through our plan to see what kind of updates we needed. We want to make sure what is within our plan is what we're putting into practice. So we made a couple changes, deletions, additions as well. And then I met with each of our school counselors to look at our academic and career plan because we have some hyperlinks within the plan to make sure that we're on the same page and presenting to families for the upcoming school year as to what academic and career planning modules, and those are listed on page 7, that we'll be providing to students, so making sure those are updated as well. And then the other change, I hope I made the change, just page 9. Get to the bottom. At our education committee meeting, yes, Jessica Irgoli pointed out, and something we have been doing, we just have to put it down on paper, is when we say the number of students who, making sure that we have the subsets of students looking at and disaggregating our data, not just looking at the whole student group, but looking at gender, race, ethnicity, and those pieces as well. So that's what we'll continue to do. We have been cutting those, for the most part, dividing students into those subsets when we do information advocacy reports, such as the number of students who complete a degree within 6 years or post-education opportunities and those kinds of things. So we just wanted to make sure that we were accurate. So thank you for that change.
Questions for Sarah?
Second.
Motion made by Lee and seconded by Jeff to approve our Education for Employment Plan. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. Motion passes. Our Education for Employment Plan is approved. Item 8, our second opportunity for citizen comments this evening. Would anyone present like to make a citizen's comment?
Madam President, may I just introduce a friend to education? In the room is the Village of Mount Horeb's Board of Education liaison. Welcome to Aaron Bain. We're grateful for you taking time to be a part of our meeting tonight.
Thanks for letting me come.
Yeah.
Thank you, Steve. Any further citizens' comments this evening? Hearing none, moving to item 9, our future agenda items are presented. Would anyone like to make an agenda request at this time? Item 10, our schedule of next meetings is presented as well. Shelby, anything of note here?
Our Finance Committee meeting for July is its usual second Monday of the month. Instead, it's July 19th. And then, as Dr. Salerno previously noted, we have our annual meeting on August 9th.
Thank you, very helpful. Okay, item 11, I'll take a motion for adjournment.
Second?
Motion made by Jeff, seconded by Diana to adjourn this July 6th regular meeting of the Board of Education. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. We are adjourned.